Hello there, Dragonfire here, and I wanted to do a video on probably my second favorite band of all time. That came in second when I did my Battle of the Bands series, and that is the Beatles. I just love the Beatles, and this one is about my Beatles collection. So let's get started here. Okay, first up, we got the Beatles' first official European release. Remember that all of the, I'm going to go for the European catalog as I have the whole thing. These are the ones released in England and probably in other parts of Great Britain and Europe as well. They did have separate releases for a number of years in America, where they released stuff separately in America, and it was kind of a marketing thing where they did stuff that, okay, this will appeal to the American audience, and stuff, and the producers and the record companies want to make stuff custom made for who, what would might appeal in England might not appeal in America, and vice versa. And the Beatles made so much music, and they were doing, just had so many song ideas. They did a lot of covers too in the early days, but they were making a lot of really good music, and it was just up to the record company and producers and stuff. And their first album in England came out in '63. The later retitled and kind of reworked a little bit version of this one, Please Please Me, came out in America, but it wasn't called Please Please Me, and it had two less songs on it. It was a little bit different. Anyway, it came out in America in '64, and for a number of years there early on, they were doing separate releases in America and in the UK. So, anyway, I've got the entire UK collection, the original collection. Please Please Me, this has I Saw Her Standing There, Anna, Go With Him, Boys, Ask Me Why, of course the title track, Please Please Me, Love Me Do, P.S. I Love You, Baby It's You. So, like, early on, they were doing a lot of love songs. So they were very much a boy band of their day. They appealed a lot to teenage girls. They did a lot of love songs. Twist and Shout is a cover. I think some of the other ones are a cover. I think Baby It's You is also a cover. A Taste of Honey, I'm pretty sure, is a cover. So, but it still has a lot of original songs that were written by the Beatles themselves, mostly by Paul McCartney and John Lennon, excuse me. I Saw Her Standing There, and Mystery is another one on here that's written by the Beatles. Love Me Do is written by the Beatles. P.S. I Love You, and Taste of, not Taste of Honey, There's a Place. So yeah, it's got a number of songs originally written by them and performed by them, as well as a few covers. But anyway, this is their first release, 1963's Please Please Me. Really good stuff on that, and that early Beatles boy band appealing to, like, younger girls and women, teenage girls and young women, doing that early boy band stuff. But over time, they would get more and more experimental and psychedelic, and experimenting with different techniques and trying different things. Of course, one of the great things about the Beatles is some songs would be as far as singing goes, who would sing the songs. Some songs are sung by John Lennon, some by Paul McCartney, some by George Harrison, and a few by Ringo Starr. He did the least amount of singing over the Beatles' time, but he still sung some songs. Of course, Ringo was the drummer. George, Paul, and John could all play guitar. Yeah, George was probably the best guitar player out of the three of them, but they all played guitar. Paul McCartney played piano on some tracks. Um, and yeah, and they could sing duets in any combination really, or trio combination. Singing, usually if it was a trio, it was, it was Paul, John, and George. There might be an exception to that rule, but sometimes all four of them kind of just harmonized together for vocals. So you could really get a lot of different combinations, and that's why. And plus, they could do a lot with their voices. That's why not all the Beatles songs sound the same. There's a good amount of variety there. Um, and experimenting with other musical instruments, especially later on in their career, like I mentioned, adding piano to a track or playing the sitar, which is kind of like an Indian version of a guitar. It's an instrument that they use, kind of like a guitar in India. So this is their second album um, with the Beatles. The second one to be released in Europe. This is still 1963, before anything's come out in America. Um, It Won't Be Long, that's the Beatles original. All I've Got to Do, another Beatles original. So yeah, they're doing a lot of original songs here, I can tell, even on this second record. They still got what looks like some covers. I believe Money is a cover. Roll Over Beethoven, that's a cover of Chuck Berry. So they're still doing some covers, but they definitely got some originals as well. I Want to Be Your Man. That's a song that I think they ended up, after the release of this album, giving the rights and the go-aheads to the Rolling Stones. And the Rolling Stones put out that song and had a big hit with it, and that kind of helped launch the Rolling Stones' career in '64. But the Beatles actually wrote the song and originally performed it, I Want to Be Your Man. So yeah, the Beatles helped the Rolling Stones kind of kick off their careers. But yeah, there's some really good stuff in here. I really like Roll Over Beethoven. I know it's a Chuck Berry original song, but it's still great here by the Beatles. Next up is A Hard Day's Night, and of course it's got the title track. I Should Have Known Better, If I Fell. Just some great stuff here. I love the Beatles all around. I can listen to basically any of their stuff, albums all the way through. And this is another still kind of in that early period of the Beatles. Next up is Beatles for Sale. 8 Days a Week is on this one. Love that one. Babies in Black is one that I really enjoy. Rock and Roll Music, that's another cover of a Chuck Berry song. Every Little Thing. Yeah, Mr. Moonlight. Got some really cool stuff in this one. Another cool one. Okay, and Help. Yeah, just another one. Like I said, the Beatles were just pumping out songs. Of course, you got the title track on here, is a really good one. Act Naturally, that's a cover, I believe, originally recorded by Buck Owens. And man, I love that song. I love Act Naturally. It's a little outside of what the Beatles normally do. It's a song with a definite country twang to it. But it's one that I really enjoy. Dizzy Miss Lizzy, I believe that's another cover. Yeah, I know for sure it wasn't written by the Beatles, but I don't think it was originally performed by them either. Uh, Ticket to Ride is a really good song. Uh, yeah, just some another really enjoyable album. Um, so yeah, okay. Next, I think by this point they're starting to get a little bit more experimental. This is the first album where you hear it. They just moved from, okay, we know we sing and the girls scream and stuff, and during a lot of that early period, once they got into 64, um, 64 was their first time in America, and they got a huge fan following. They released the album, and then they went over there. They went overseas. They were on the Ed Sullivan Show, um, and was blew up and became huge. And like I said, they were releasing albums in America that were different from their European albums, but they were also touring and selling out stadiums everywhere and stuff. And they were crazy famous. But I think Rubber Soul, I think for some, is the first album where they start to get a little bit more experimental with their music, and it's not just all love songs or breakup songs or songs that kind of strike at an emotional chord about love or whatever. They get a little more experimental with their music and what they want to do. So, um, Drive My Car, Norwegian Wood, uh, Nowhere Man, Think for Yourself, Michelle, Looking Through You, In My Life, Run for Your Life. Yeah, there's some really really good stuff on Rubber Soul. And again, if you only know the Beatles for songs like I Want to Hold Your Hand, which wasn't actually on any of their European albums, that was on one of their American albums. Um, if you only know stuff like that and the love songs that the girls went crazy for, um, uh, you know, check out, from Rubber Soul onward in their catalog. Rubber Soul came out in '65, so it gets starting to get a little more experimental here. And man, they're really pumping out the albums already. Just everything I've shown you so far has been 63, 64, 65. So yeah. All right. Next up, we got Revolver. This again is in their experimental thing where they're still trying different stuff. This has the first release of the song Yellow Submarine. I like Dr. Robert on here. Tomorrow Never Knows. Eleanor Rigby. Taxman. And Your Bird Can Sing. Really fun stuff. I really like this album here. Revolver. Alright. After that, this was huge, huge, huge. And this almost moves from experimental to psychedelic with this release here. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This is when they decided to stop touring. And they didn't need it because they were making a ton of money off of record sales, singles, EPs, 45s, you name it. They were putting out all sorts of stuff. I mean, I'm doing just their official full-length studio albums, but they had other stuff that they were selling, and they were the biggest band in the world. And the idea behind Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is this fictional band, kind of like that they've said before that the album would tour instead of them touring. And of course, these all would have been on records, vinyls, vinyl records and stuff like that at the time. In the 1960s, CDs definitely were not invented yet. Um, there weren't cassette tapes or 8-track tapes to the best of my knowledge. None of that. It would have all been on records at that point in time. That would have been the format, different styles of records, whether they be singles or EPs or 45s or full size records or whatever. They would have been um, putting them out in that format. Of course, now I collect them all on CD, but I love the opening track, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and then track number 12 on this is kind of the part 2 of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. In between, they got songs like Fixing a Hole, She's Leaving Home, Getting Better, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, With a Little Help from My Friends. Of course, With a Little Help from My Friends was the theme show for the TV show The Wonder Years, but not the Beatles version. Instead, they did a cover by Joe Cooker. But I believe it's his performance from Woodstock that they use as the theme song for the TV show Wonder Years. The original Wonder Years I'm talking about, not the remake that came out recently. But yeah, I love every song on this. A Day in the Life is very, very trippy psychedelic stuff. Then the release of their big double album. The White Album, also known as as the Beatles, just the Beatles, or the White Album, or whatever you want to call it. I believe from, if I'm not mistaken, I think from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band onward, these releases were simultaneous and exactly the same in England and Europe or whatever as they were in America. So worldwide, wherever these were being sold, I believe from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band onward, they were all the same. Prior to those releases, there were, like I said, different releases for America than there were in the UK and whatnot. So, but yeah, the White Album, perhaps, right up there with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, is the most famous works of the Beatles that they're most well known for. If anybody knows Beatles albums, they know those two. Back in the USSR, Dear Prudence, Glass Onion, Obla Di Obla Da, Wild Honey Pie. I could name every song on here. This is a big double album. And they stuck with that format, although I don't know for sure. They might have been able to fit it all in one CD, since CDs hold so much more than what albums could back in the day, what vinyls could back in the day. But maybe not. It is quite a lot of content, so you can see the kind of double album format there of the two, and they kept it in the exact same format that it had back in the day when it was released on vinyl for the CD edition. And I think even if this might be available on cassette tape, it might take 4 cassette tapes to hold it all, but yeah. Of course, the vinyls back in the day were double-sided, and so that way they could fit more on a vinyl. The CD can still be a double CD case with it being only one-sided rather than double-sided. But yeah, about the only thing I don't like here is the second to last song on disc 2, which is Revolution 9. That's I used to like it just for the weirdness and novelty of it. Um, that it was just kind of so far out there, psychedelic and whatnot. But I've kind of gotten over that, and I just kind of say, it's not really even a song. It's just John Lennon standing in front of the microphone saying number nine, number nine, number nine, just over and over again. It's not a song. So it's seriously, it's like 7 minutes long, and it's just a bunch of nonsense. Um, so yeah, I don't really care for Revolution Number Nine. It's probably my least favorite Beatles song ever, if you even count it as a song. But still a great album, the White Album, and it's kind of cool that I guess John Lennon was able to express himself artistically like that. Just do what he wanted to do. He wanted to express himself that way. So okay, um, this is Yellow Submarine by the Beatles. This is their next one, and it was mainly produced as a soundtrack for the movie Yellow Submarine. There are several editions of this, but I think this is the most comprehensive one. And you'll see that uh, I have here, it has a Yellow Submarine, Only a Northern Song, All Together Now, Hey Bulldog, It's All Too Much, All You Need Is Love. That's kind of was side A of the original vinyl. And on side B, it's got some instrumental tracks performed by um, the orchestra of George Martin. And they're just all instrumental tracks performed by an orchestra, and they're kind of soundtrack, like background music of the Yellow Submarine film, which was a cartoon. And it's got Pepperland, Sea of Time, Sea of Holes, Sea of Monsters, March of the Meanies, Pepperland, Laid Waste, and Yellow Submarine and Pepperland are the titles of the instrumental tracks. Okay. This is Abbey Road. And this is getting now into 1969. Yeah, all this stuff is still from 63 to 69. That's how prolific the Beatles were. Come Together, something, Maxwell Silverhammer, Oh Darling, Octopus's Garden, I Want You, Here Comes the Sun, You Never Give Me Your Money. I mean, this thing is packed jam with some great hits. She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. So yeah, Abbey Road. Everyone knows that one. And the Beatles' final album finished in 1969, but it had to go through post-production and all that stuff. So it's actually released in early 1970, right after the Beatles themselves actually officially disbanded. The Beatles' final studio album, Let It Be. So yeah, Dig a Pony, Two of Us, Across the Universe, I Me Mine, Get Back. Get Back would be one that would be covered by Aerosmith later on. Great song. One After 909, Maggie May, I Got a Feeling. Yeah. What else can I say about Let It Be? It's a fantastic album. Okay, so what else do I have besides the main catalog there, the American catalog, or the European catalog. I do have one of their American releases, probably the most famous of all their American exclusive releases, and that being Magical Mystery Tour. This is definitely, from the album art, you can see this is when they're getting into their more psychedelic phase. Um, and so this is a good one, you know, right along Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band type of style. I believe this might have been the last American release before Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, this has got the song Magical Mystery Tour, of course, the title track, Fool on a Hill, Blue Jay Way, Your Mother Should Know, I'm the Walrus, Hello Goodbye, Strawberry Fields, Forever, Penny Lane, Baby You're a Rich Man, All You Need Is Love. So you can see kind of a variety of different stuff that they're putting together there. Now, this next one is an interesting collection here. This one not by the Beatles exactly, but I'm going to throw it in right now. And that is the Beatles Symphony of the Stars collection. This is where an orchestra plays selected Beatles songs. I think they actually made a 3-volume version of this, or a 3rd volume came out eventually. I have the 2-volume box set before the 3rd volume came out. But this has got Obla Di La Da, And I Love Her, Michelle, Long and Winding Road, Can't Buy Me Love, Norwegian Wood, I Feel Fine, Hello Goodbye, Why My Guitar Gently Weeps, Across the Universe, I Should Have Known Better. So yeah, just Penny Lane, a lot of really good stuff. I Want to Hold Your Hand, a lot of good stuff on this one. But all played by an orchestra, and you can hear the music, and it's like the flutes and the trombones or whatever instruments that they have in an orchestra that you wouldn't hear in a typical band. You get with this. It's interesting to hear them do a rendition of the Beatles' work. So that's kind of a fun thing to have in my collection. Okay, now back to the Beatles proper here. So I have this 2-disc set, and these are all the songs that were released on American albums or released as singles in America, or released as singles that never made it onto an album, whatever, B-sides. Some of them are slightly alternate takes of songs that appeared on their regular albums or whatever, but just to kind of complete, to get the songs that you wouldn't necessarily get if you get the 13 album collection of Please Please Me all the way to Let It Be. Those 13 albums there, 14 if you count, the White Album being a double album. But to kind of get to fill in the holes and the gaps of the stuff that's not on there, you have Past Masters Volume 1 and Past Masters Volume 2. So, Past Masters gives you songs, like I said, that for whatever alternate takes or stuff that was only released in America, since most of the American releases are no longer in print. When you go to buy them, unless you find a really old copy, most of the time you can only find the stuff that was originally released in Europe. So so these Past Masters Volume 1 and 2 have the extra stuff here. So I Want to Hold Your Hand is on here. Like I said, that was never on any of the European albums. Now I know I mentioned it. I think I Want to Hold Your Hand was on this, but again, this is an orchestra playing the music. Whereas if you want to hear the Beatles actually sing the song, it's on this Past Masters Volume 1. This Boy, Long Tall Sally is a cover of Little Richard. I'm Down, I believe, might also be a cover, but it's a song that the Beatles did. It's another song that Aerosmith later picks up, but I don't think I'm Down is actually Beatles original. I think it might have been done by somebody before the Beatles. But anyway, yeah, it's got all these songs that you wouldn't necessarily get if you just have the collection of the 13 European releases. You get these extra songs. On volume 2, let's see, Day Trippers, one of my favorites on here. Lady Madonna is another really good one. Hey Jude. A different version of Revolution, not the Revolution 1 or the Revolution 9 that appear on the White Album. Revolution 1, by the way, on the White Album is actually a song, whereas Revolution 9 is not a song. But you just get the plain version called Revolution here, which I believe was also included on the Beatles' Greatest Hits. Get Back, Across the Universe. Again, some of these were on the other albums, but these are like alternate takes of those songs. Yeah, so yeah, some really good stuff here. I like Paperback Writer and Lady Madonna. So yeah. So that's Past Masters Volume 1, Volume 2. Now, these are some releases that I remember when these came out. I'm saying right now with this, the anthology series. These came out in the 90s along with a video documentary series, and it was this huge, like, I think 9-part documentary series that aired on TV like every Friday night or something like that over a number of weeks. And these are some rare outtakes, especially Volume 1 has, of the anthology series, has some interviews with John Lennon and Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, the whole group. Stuff like that, their producer, and stuff like that. So yeah, George Martin, that's the name I was thinking of. Anyway, it's got a whole list of stuff, and it's got some songs that were previously unreleased, or some demo versions of songs and stuff like that. So this was a big double disc set. I think it came on like 4 cassette tapes or 2 CDs at the time. And it's got booklets with stuff, and I think they have a photo in here of like an early lineup of the Beatles, like before Ringo Starr joined the band. Yeah, here it is. I hope I don't get sued, but yeah, but Ringo is not in this picture. Instead, it's their original drummer before Ringo, and you can see they were a 5-piece band at the time. So in this photo is Pete Best, and Pete Best was a member of the Beatles before they became famous, and then he dropped out of the band, and the other guy dropped out, and then Ringo Starr came in, was the new drummer, and then and that's when they became famous. Okay, so yeah, I can read the thing here. So all the way over on the side here, the drummer, the guy with the drumsticks in his hand, and standing next to the drum there, that is Pete Best. He was the drummer before Ringo Starr. And he sued the Beatles because he just wanted some money for using his photograph without permission. But I do have an original print here that still has the photo in it. And then next, that's George Harrison. The next guy there is John Lennon. And then Paul McCartney. And then this guy here is, the final guy is Stuart. How do you pronounce his name? Struck Fate or whatever. And he was again, a guy who was in the early lineup of the band, um, or a lineup of the band before they became famous, when they were a 5-man group instead of a 4-man group. But I don't know if it was. I'm pretty sure it was Pete Best, but if he and Stewart sued together, or if it was just Pete Best or whatever. But anyway, one or both of them got some cut of some of the money. Just like, hey, you didn't have permission to use our photograph. So yeah, Volume 1 has very early stuff from the Beatles. And again, some of it is stuff that had been released before, but it's mixed in with some brand new releases and some, the favorites of the stuff that was released before, and demo versions or alternate takes and all that kind of stuff. And so here's Volume 2. Again, a double album. And I believe all 3 of these volumes 1, 2, and 3 all ended up on bestseller list. The Beatles had #1 albums again. Yeah, one, if not all 3 of them, went to #1 at one point. So Beatles had #1 best-selling albums in the 90s. Yeah, this is the Volume 3 now. And really fun, really good stuff. Alternate takes on some of the Beatles collection. Okay, now this is stuff from very early on. And this was another guy, Tony Chardin, or however you pronounce that name. Some stuff when he performed with the band. So on the back here, surviving recordings of that time period. And you can see here, like, Tony Chardin and the Beat Boys was apparently the name of the band before they changed it to the Beatles. They were the Beat Boys, Brothers, Beat Brothers. You can see that several of the songs on here are credited to them. So you can see the song list there. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, some more Beatles adjacent stuff. Of course, the Beatles, all 4 of them went on to have solo careers after the Beatles broke up. Just say that I don't have anything from Ringo Starr or John Lennon. Even though John Lennon was quite successful before he died in 1980, he still had a successful career for like 10 years thereafter the Beatles broke up. But he put out some really good stuff in the 70s, but I don't have any of his stuff currently in my collection. I do have this, like I said, nothing from John or Ringo, but I do have Best of George Harrison. Now this one is made up of actually half songs that Harrison sung while with the Beatles, and half original solo material after the Beatles broke up. This version of George Harrison's Greatest Hits is a very early release, the Best of George Harrison there. And then this is one here called Wingspan. It's the best of Paul McCartney. Also some stuff with his band Wings, sometimes just called Wings, other times called Paul McCartney and Wings. But yeah, some really stuff. Paul McCartney had some big hits with like Band on the Run. Was a big hit song for him, and he had others in his solo career. Silly Love Songs is another one that was a pretty big hit for him. Live and Let Die, which he wrote for the James Bond movie. Um, so yeah, he's had some pretty big hit ones. And this is a collection of some of his more successful songs. So yeah, it's a double discer as well. So this is all entirely stuff that Paul McCartney did after the Beatles broke up. No Beatles stuff on here now. He might. I'm trying to think if he covered, or if there's any covers of any Beatles songs here. Not that I can see. Maybe my favorite track on here is Maybe I'm Amazed. That's an excellent song. But yeah, it's all kind of stuff that I know live in concert he still will do Beatles songs. He'll do stuff with his band. Last time I knew he was live in concert, he still did stuff with his band that were covers of songs that he had done way back when he was one of the Beatles. So anyway, man, this is a long video, but the Beatles have so much to cover, and they're such great stuff. So I've shown you all like my Beatles and Beatles adjacent type material. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Dragonfire out.